But some of the bullet points to the replenishment assessment. What is the purpose? The purpose, again, is that it will assist the association with increasing the repair and replacement funds. It's a funding vehicle strictly and solely intended to supplement the repair and replacement fund. Many of you, if you watched or were present during the budget meeting we had yesterday, bless you, we discussed the budget for operating. We also discussed the increase in the required contribution to the repair and replacement fund. You may have seen that required contribution has increased by 25.7, or roughly $500,000 year over year. There are some things that are going on within the world. I'm sure you've seen through supply chain issues, inflation, and those projected costs to replace the items. And what is the repair and replace item? That is this desk. That is this building. That is the disco ball up there. All things that are in existence, the repair and replacement fund is utilized to pay for that replacement, or the tree maintenance, not just the golf course, all of the common area, the facilities, the buildings, and streets, which is one of your largest components of the reserve study. And so the purpose is an additional funding vehicle for the repair and replacement fund. So who is affected by this? This is a one-time assessment only for new home buyers into Sun Lakes. All existing members are grandfathered in. So what are those grandfathered exemptions? Well, it would apply to if you transfer of title to a family trust or an immediate family, or you're a current member who decides, I'm going to go live in this area, Breckenridge. I'm going to sell my house and go move to Breckenridge. And within 6 months, you were grandfathered in. You would not have to pay this fee because you were already existing in a existing member. You sold your house, moved to another property within Sun Lakes. Within 6 months, you would be grandfathered. You'd have a grandfathered exemption. That's a laugh track right there. The timing, the new buyer has up to 9 months to pay. And Wayne will go into this of why it says 9 months. When is it? Is it paid through escrow? That was a question from the last one we had, and Wayne answered it. I'll let him talk about that. How is this approved? Now, this will require a CC&R amendment. This is going to be done via a special election. So at tomorrow's open session, the board will be setting the election day, the member of record date, approval to move forward with the ballot. That will be on tomorrow's open agenda. And this will require the ballot measure must be approved by the affirmative vote of delegates representing at least 3/4 of the voting power of the association as a whole, and also 3/4 of the voting power of members other than the declarant. I'll be talking a little bit about that tomorrow as well. So in essence, we have to have that affirmative 75% to get this passed. It has been done successfully in the past through the members and delegates, through the 7 amendments that we've done. The one amendment that didn't do, that was actually required by Sacramento, didn't, and we had to go to court for that and ask a judge to allow that to proceed. The election time. So when is the projected election date? And that is December 7th, a date that will, as Bob has said, date that lives in infamy. That is a Thursday, or is it a Friday? I can't remember. But nonetheless, December 7th, and ballots will be due at that time. So let's go on to, key reason, there are several projects, the funding, the items listed in the repair and replacement fund in the reserve study, again, those are the existing assets of Sun Lakes. You'll see in green that the recommended funding level, this is the amount of money through assessments that we will be required to contribute to the repair and replacement fund in order to keep it at a percentage of funding. Prior boards have desired a 70% plus funding level. Right now we're at 65 roughly, and we'll be dropping with the new budget projected 64.8. Now, the red those are the columns from 2024 all the way to 2053. That is the prior budget, what we've been doing increasing. So you see that gap of where we need to be, the green, and where we have been, based on the trends, red, there's a gap. That gap right now, without this amendment, will mean I have to increase the assessments. That next year's budget, if there's another increase projected of $400,000, I'm going to have to come back and ask the board that we are going to need to raise the assessments to ensure that we have met that required contribution to the reserve. Now, if this passes, though, it could help with funding the reserve, repair and replacement reserve, as again a supplement to it. So let me go on to that piece. And so here's where I talked about year over year from 2023 to 2024. We have an increase in the contribution required of 25.7, a little over $500,000. So here's the slide I want to get to, which is with the replenishment fund, we have a potential of adding additional funding of $400,000 that would go straight to the repair and replacement fund. It doesn't go to operating, doesn't go to capital improvement, doesn't, as the last joke, it doesn't go into Jason Ewell's pocket. This funding goes straight to, and it says right in the CC&R amendment that this will go to repair and replacement. It will help offset large assessment contribution requirements in the future. So potentially, instead of having to raise 25%, which we're having to do for the 2024 budget, it may be less. It may be only 5% additional assessments in the future that I have to contribute because of this replenishment fund. And again, it brings in new funds to keep the funding level higher. Again, not trying to keep the assessments going up slowly, not dramatic increases that affect the association, affect you as a homeowner. Now, without the replenishment fund, all repair and replacement funding will come from assessments, come from your pockets. It will, and if we require, as this board and prior boards have done, of keeping a 70% funding level or higher, we will be required to contribute more to that repair and replacement fund. Because, think about it from accounting, one side of the ledger, the expenses are growing, and how the repair and replacement fund gets funded is through contributions, a little bit through interest, but mainly through contributions from the assessments. So if these costs going up and you want to keep a 70% funding level, you're going to have to raise the assessment and the contribution to the repair and replacement fund. And what if we don't do it? Well, there's a potential, as prior boards have done, is defer projects. Also, we have increased costs with golf course maintenance equipment, new restrictions coming down the line from Sacramento to buy electric vehicles, gas vehicles, under a certain, over a certain amount will have to be replaced with electric vehicles or equipment. And so there's several things that are coming down the line. And this board has said, hey, we've got to take this very seriously. There's issues that need to be addressed within the community, but funding for those projects needs to be done either through the assessment or, again, the replenishment assessment fund. So with that, some of the basics of who, what, why, now. And now I'm going to go into, or let Wayne talk about that, of where he's done it of the community.
We're very fortunate to have Wayne Gorelnik. He's an expert in the area of reserve replenishment and assessment, and he's going to be explaining to us the ins and outs of it and the benefits for our community. Wayne?
Well, thank you, Bob. Let's go back to the history of this process. About 20 years ago, I had a similar golf course community, but they were condominiums, and they had sloped tiled roofs, and the management at the time kind of fell into a rabbit hole of believing that lifetime tiles means you never have to fund reserves. A long story short, the underlayment was fried, needed to be replaced, and it was a $24 million job, and everyone got assessed $25,000. And that obviously did not make any homeowners very pleased, and I was given the instruction to make sure that never happened again and to make sure the reserves were properly funded for roofs, roads, golf course, etc. We then developed this reserve replenishment assessment. And in that community, they've collected over, I think it's actually more than $12 million over the course of the last 20 years, and have a very large reserve and high percentage funded reserve fund. And since then, a large community known as Sun City Palm Desert also adopted it, and they've collected, I think, about $3 million already at the rate of at least $600,000 a year. And it's spread through the state where people are trying to have a funding for reserves, solely for reserves, without an increase in regular assessments, and that's what this accomplishes. So the way it works from a mechanism standpoint is that if the membership would approve an amendment to the CCNRs, then there would be an amendment recorded, and once that amendment is recorded, let's just say it's January 1, then every owner in Sun Lakes that own prior to January 1 of 2024 would be deemed an existing owner and would have no obligation to pay the reserve replenishment assessment. They've already contributed a lot of money on a monthly basis to their reserves, and they're grandfathered in. Any new owner would have an obligation to pay the reserve replenishment assessment within 9 months of their becoming a new owner. From a practical standpoint, that usually occurs. They make the payment through escrow because an escrow demand is sent to management. Management fills it out and says there's a reserve replenishment assessment. That's equal to 6 months worth of regular assessments. Right now, that'd be approximately $2,000. And they can pay it within 9 months. Normally, it's paid at the close of escrow because people like to just dispense with it in that fashion. There's other scenarios where if you are an existing owner, it's built into the text of this proposed amendment that if you want to convey from yourselves as individuals to your family trust, you would not have to pay a reserve replenishment assessment. If you wish to convey it for no consideration to your immediate family, that would not create any reserve replenishment assessment. And then finally, if you own a home and are an existing owner and want to sell that and buy another within 6 months, you would not pay a reserve replenishment assessment. So that's all built in. My understanding that based on information from past sales, that there's actually estimation that this would carve out about $400,000 in money. Again, it must go in the reserves. It would be actually a breach of fiduciary duty if the board did not put these monies in reserves. It is there to fund the reserves, which ultimately, through that funding technique, would then reduce the need of somewhat, not all of it, reduce some of the need to increase monthly assessments to additionally fund reserves. This, in effect, causes $400,000 to go in reserves, and that $400,000 is $400,000 less that needs to be raised from your monthly assessments.
So basically, it's a real win-win proposition for the homeowners here. It's an opportunity to fund the reserves, enhance the common areas in our community, and keep our assessments lower than they need to be at the present time, or keep them from raising significantly. Are there any other communities that have done this, and how has it worked for them, Wayne?
Well, there's 6 communities that have approved it, and I've got 3 ballot measures out there right now for other communities. One that's pending now is up at Lake Wildwood in El Dorado County. The large ones, Sun City, Palm Desert, and the lakes, it's working wonderfully. It's not been a negative in any way, shape, or form. I don't know of any negative. It hasn't impacted, from my understanding, any property values, and I think the information is that because it provides another funding source. It keeps the assessment structure a little bit lower, which keeps you competitive with other senior housing communities of similar nature like yours that have a golf course.
Thank you. Another question which came up earlier today during our town hall was that someone asked, why are we doing this now? Why don't wait to the election time period for next April?
You want to, when you're doing an amendment to the CCNRs, you want to keep it away from the election of directors. There's a lot of moving parts with the election of directors, and it becomes a lot of politics. This is a simple amendment to the CCNRs. We want the members to be concentrating and reading the text and understanding it, asking questions unrelated to the board meeting, and simply vote up or down on whether or not they want this approved. I will tell you that of those 6 associations that have already approved it, every single one approved it by 80-90%. There really wasn't any negative feedback because the existing owners would not have to pay it. And then they feel like, wow, it's a win because I don't have to pay it and I get to keep my assessments a little bit lower because the reserve is receiving $400,000 which would otherwise have to be an increase in monthly assessments. I think your calculation, Bob, was about $10 a month for every $400,000 received.
Correct. Any other questions from the board members that are present?
Yes, I would like to ask a question. We keep throwing out this $400,000 number. How did you come up with the assessment? What's it based on, and how is it going to change over the years?
Okay, number one, the $400,000 came from Sun Lakes based on the historical number of sales at 200 sales per year, and you multiply 200 by 2,000. The 2,000 came from what this assessment would be. The reserve replenishment assessment paid by new owners, not existing owners, would be equal to 6 months' worth of regular assessments. If you multiply 346 by 6, it's going to get you in the range of around $2,000.
Any other questions from other board members?
Yeah, I have a question. Will this replenishment assessment adversely affect real estate sales in Sun Lakes?
I can't speak for Sun Lakes, but I can speak for those 6 communities, in particular the Lakes and Sun City, Palm Desert. It has not impacted sales. And again, it makes them competitive within their peers. So Sun City, Palm Desert has a very similar assessment that you have. And the Lakes, believe it or not, and I can say this, at $1,500 a month, it's a condominium, it keeps them competitive with similarly situated golf course communities with a large clubhouse, country club, and 27 holes of golf. It keeps them competitive with the 3 or 4 communities of similar nature.
Well, thank you very much for coming today and explaining to our membership. I just want everybody to be aware of the information, and please vote. The upcoming election, I think it's going to be December the 7th, I believe. The ballots will be mailed out in November. It's very, very important. Get in contact with your friends and neighbors and delegates, district delegates. Let them know that you are interested in, or whether you support or not. But this is a great opportunity for us to be able to improve our community and have no cost and no expense to the current homeowners. Thank you.